This item is a presentation, discussion, possible action regarding a 2024 College Station existing conditions report, and I did print out a copy of it here. Got quite a few notes, but I'm not going to bore everybody tonight with those, so I hope other council members will be equally reticent, and if we have corrections and things, just share them with Ms. Wade. However, I'm going to turn the floor over to her. I know she has a presentation, and we will begin with that presentation, and the council will deliberate. What do you want to come out of this? A approval, acceptance, or just thank you very much?
I think we're looking for an acceptance of the report.
Okay. So we'll make a motion at the end to accept the report, or we'll send it back for further work.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Your floor is yours.
Thank you. Heather Wade, Principal Planner. Good evening, council members. Today, I'll be walking you through the existing conditions report for the City of College Station, and it covers trends from 2019 to 2023. This report is part of our ongoing effort to assess how conditions in our community are evolving to help guide decisions and future planning. It also supports our comprehensive plan, which was originally adopted in 2009 and most recently updated in 2021. This report provides critical insights into population trends, economic development, land use, infrastructure, and transportation, and we update this report every 5 years. Our goal today is to highlight key findings from the report, which will be utilized by staff and the Comprehensive Plan Evaluation Committee for its evaluation and appraisal of the comprehensive plan. It is important to note that since the comprehensive plan was updated in 2021, it is expected that the evaluation and update to the comprehensive plan will more or less look like a basic check-in of the plan, meaning that we don't really anticipate a total rehaul of the plan like it was done in 2021. But it is dependent on the outcome of the report and the recommendations by the Comprehensive Plan Evaluation Committee. Okay, so starting with demographics, our population grew by nearly 8% between 2019 and 2023, and we expect that trend to continue at about 2 to 3% annually. We project our population to fall between 146,000 and 157,000 people by 2030 at those rates. On the left side of this slide, you can see the age distribution of the population as it was in 2023. This type of chart is what we call a population pyramid. This chart shows the age and gender breakdown of College Station's population.
Yeah, you only had.
We're going to speed y'all up.
We
one
didn't
way or
tell
the
you.
Great. So what really stands out is the large concentration of people between the ages of 15 and 24, especially in the 20 to 24 age range, which makes up over a quarter of residents in the city. This does reflect the presence of Texas A&M University and shows that our city is heavily shaped by its student population. In contrast, the population in other age groups is much smaller, particularly in the young child and older adult ranges. We are seeing growth in older age groups, with over 11% now 60 and up. On the right side of the slide, we've provided you with a picture of how the population has changed since 2018. There are a few important takeaways. The student population has essentially more or less stabilized. The 20 to 24 age group, which represents the core college demographic, only grew by about 1.5%. The biggest growth was in older adults, especially retirees. The 85 plus population grew by 77%, and 80 to 84 age group grew by 25%. But while these increases are notable, these ages still make up a very small portion of the population. Looking at diversity, Hispanic and Black populations have grown significantly by 84.5% and 56.9% respectively. Asian and other racial groups are also growing, reflecting an increasingly diverse community. When we look at income, we see that our median income remains below the state, $47,632 compared to Texas's $75,780. But that number is skewed by our high number of non-family and student households. You can see that family households have much higher income, and married couple family income is higher than that of both the county and of the state. College Station has over 47,000 households. About 2/3 of our housing is renter occupied, and nearly 1/3 of households are single-person households. In College Station, non-family households make up the majority, 54.4%, compared to only 32.6% at the state level. This is quite different from Texas overall, where family households are nearly 2/3 of the total. The Bryan-College Station metro area sits in the middle, but College Station does stand out, again, largely influenced by our student population and our younger demographic. That household makeup is also reflected in housing tenure. In College Station, 65.1% of housing units are renter occupied. That's almost the inverse of the statewide average, where homeownership dominates at over 62%. Compared to the metro area, again, we see that College Station has a much higher renter population, driven by a mix of students, younger professionals, and a highly mobile population. The graph on the top left of this slide shows you housing production over the 5-year period, specifically total new residential units constructed by year. We have seen more than 1,000 residential units constructed in most years since 2019. 2022 did show a bit of a dip, but numbers rebounded in 2023 to over 1,200 residential units constructed. Based on these numbers, construction of residential units remains stable. At the bottom of this slide, the graph shown is of completed residential permits from 2019 to 2023. By completed permits, I mean those permits that resulted in actual residential development and were issued certificates of occupancy. This graph shows that the city has seen a steady upward trend, showing an approximate 36% increase in completed permits between 2019 and 2023. The graph on the top right of the slide gives you an idea of the types of housing we have. You can see that College Station leans heavily toward multifamily units and single-family units, showing that we have nearly 24,000 units in multifamily, and which is slightly more than our 22,000 units of single-family. Townhouses, duplexes, and mobile homes round out the mix, though in much smaller quantities. Our economy is growing steadily. Employment increased 16.2% over the past 5 years, surpassing the state's rate. Unemployment is low at 3.2% and is also under the statewide average. Our largest employers continue to be Texas A&M University, the City of College Station, and Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies. Since 2018, the percentage of primary jobs in College Station held by workers who live outside the city has increased. The top places where workers live outside of College Station and Bryan are Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. In 2022, 71.1% of workers employed in College Station lived outside of the city, while 63.3% of College Station residents worked outside of the city. We did look at other cities for comparison. So for example, In the city of Bryan, 72% of workers employed in the city of Bryan live outside of the city, and 66% of Bryan residents worked outside of the city. So they are comparable. The city's total taxable assessed value rose 34% between 2018 and 2023. Total appraised value for all property in College Station is over $17.6 billion. Residential properties make up over $9 billion of that, and commercial properties make up $7.8 billion of that. The city's tax rate in fiscal year 2023 was just over 51 cents per $100 valuation. While collections have increased 130% over the past decade, the actual property tax rate has decreased since 2019. The city receives 1.5% of sales tax on goods and beverages sold within the city limits. Retail and food services make up approximately 71% of the sales tax base. So we've heard a lot about housing affordability tonight. In 2011, the median home sale price was approximately $150,000, but by 2023, it had more than doubled, exceeding $300,000. You can see that in 2018, the median price was just under $250,000. Construction valuation remains strong across both residential and commercial sectors and shows an increasing trend over the 2019 to 2023 period. Tourism significantly impacts College Station's economy in several ways. We can look at jobs generated, tourism spending, and hotel occupancy tax revenue. For example, the tourism sector generated 5,200 jobs worth $169.4 million in payroll in 2023 alone. Hotel occupancy tax revenues have steadily increased over time, reaching $7.4 million in 2023. Total direct travel spending in College Station was $428 million in 2023, and College Station has 40 hotels with a combined total of 4,354 hotel rooms, supporting the accommodation of our visitors. Looking at existing land use, nearly 41% of land is still undeveloped or used for agriculture, and residential makes up about a third. Our future land use plan anticipates residential use will increase to about 45.5%, with commercial and industrial use at 14.6%. Zoning more or less reflects existing land use patterns. 32.4% of land is zoned residential, 17.2% is designated for Texas A&M, and 10.7% is commercial or industrial. College Station's infrastructure is growing to support increasing demand. Electricity use was nearly 1 billion kilowatt hours in 2023. We consumed over 5 billion gallons of water in 2023 as well. These figures show steady demand and the need for continued attention to infrastructure. We can also look at residential and commercial garbage and recycling. The city collects more than 30,000 tons of garbage annually. Looking at transportation, traffic patterns reflect our growing population and commuter activity. The average commute time is under 19 minutes. We see the heaviest traffic volumes in the urban core and around Highway 6 intersections. Traffic volume decreases farther out, but peak times still see surges due to commuting. We do track crash data for our transportation planning, and we are able to identify key hotspots to improve safety. Fortunately, most crashes in the city are deemed minor and make up 97% of crashes. So if I had to summarize the key takeaways from the report, because it is very long, as you have all seen, if I had to summarize it in just a few sentences, it would probably be this. College Station continues to experience steady population and employment growth, with projections showing sustained expansion in the coming years. The city remains youthful due to Texas A&M, but its older population is gradually increasing. Economic indicators are strong, unemployment is low, the tax base is growing, and tourism is thriving. Housing is dominated by renters, multifamily units, and single-family homes, and construction has remained steady post-pandemic. Moving forward, this data and the associated report presented to you today will be crucial in shaping the evaluation of the comprehensive plan and its subsequent update. So what can you expect next? A 5-year implementation progress report conducted by staff planner Ashley Klein will soon be presented to the Comprehensive Plan Evaluation Committee. Our long-range planning administrator, Christine Leal, will be leading the appraisal and evaluation of the plan, which is being conducted alongside the Plan Evaluation Committee. And that should be presented to you sometime in the fall of this year. We anticipate that the updates to the plan will be completed by November, and stakeholder engagement will take place throughout this year to inform all reports and the process. And that concludes my presentation, so thank you, and I will take any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Appreciate the presentation. As I did indicate in this full document, I did find some real questionable items in there, and I'm going to just pass them off to you after the meeting because I think some of them are erroneous, but I didn't see anything here that reflected those same numbers. There's more in the detail, I think, than the strategic items that you presented. Okay, before us is this existing conditions report. It is a report as based on, I think in almost all cases, I saw references to the American Community Survey and to other kinds of statistics that are kept, so it's pretty well referenced as well. They're based on the best data we have and factual in nature, but I will ask the council if they have anything they wish to comment on or add or concerns they have regarding the plan. And maybe I'll start with Mr. Schaefer. We'll start at the other end and leave Mr. Wright a little time more to think. We'll start with Mr. Schaefer.
I don't get any time to think. Okay.
You don't have any time.
That's right. I'm so quick. I don't have to think. Heather, thanks for the presentation and thanks for the information. I admit to not having had a chance to look carefully at the full report. It's a lot of good stuff. I did look through it. What I thought to myself as I looked through it was I've got to sit with this thing a little bit and really digest it because there's a ton of really good information there that I should know about my city. So I have nothing at this point to add, Mayor. I just thank you for the work you've done to put it together, and I appreciate the work that's going on with planners to keep the evaluations going and keep us moving forward.
The idea of our discussion here is not to talk about what this implies for other agenda items, but rather to concern ourselves with whether this is an accurate picture or not. Mr. Yancey.
Thank you, Mayor Nichols. Ms. Wade, is that correct? Excellent presentation, and this report is there's a lot in here with some huge implications. I noticed you didn't mention on page 187 in our packet, minus 20, almost 21% of 30 to 34-year-olds. I thought that was a startling statistic. It's back further.
There you go. Back up
One forward.
right there.
Yeah.
30 to 34 years of age, which ostensibly they would be out of school unless they're like permanent residents, or permanent students, I meant to say. I mean, that's just dramatic, I thought. And then also, we heard testimony earlier today during Here Visitors, and I think you kind of alluded to it on page 13 of the report, page 186 of our packet. We don't have as much land as many, but we're far and away from being out of land. I mean, we got 3,400, probably a net of 3,000 acres zoned residential or agricultural open, not in the floodplain that we can build. So reports of the demise of available developable land in College Station, Texas are I mean, we have land is my point. Would you agree?
Just to make sure I'm referring to the correct map, are you referring to the existing land use?
No, ma'am.
Back a little further.
This exact, the graphic on showing density,
Page 13 in the full report.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Page 13, full, not in here, he's commenting on the full report.
I am. I'm commenting on that land availability issue. I'm made satisfied so that we do have developable land for at least, our lifetimes to come, and that's without voluntary annexation agreements. And then loss of youth, which I think is startling and concerning. And then economic development and primary jobs. To me, that was pretty dramatic as well. We don't have a lot of blue, white, and gray collar jobs, so there's not really
What page?
much of a reason for.
What page you on? The report.
I didn't go to the page on that one. I can find it,
Okay,
but I'm
okay,
in the
that's
interest
fine,
of
that's fine.
brevity. I'm just trying to tell you the things that leapt out at me were land availability, more than we think, loss of youth, very concerning, postgraduate youth, and 20% in 5 years, and a dearth of economic development activity around primary jobs. And that, Mayor, I'll close with, that's why I brought up that consumer-based economy issue. I think we can, as one member of council, we can lay to rest the notion that retailers don't want to be in our affluent community. They do. They come, and they're going to keep coming. I'd like to see us shift to primary jobs so that these kids have, and I say it all the time, and it may sound corny, and I'm not going to stop saying it this way, they have their shot at the American dream in College Station, Texas, from a housing perspective and from an employment perspective. And that is my primary focus and takeaway from this report. And with that, I'll hush. Thank you, Ms. Wade. Great presentation. Thank you, Mayor Nichols.
Nicolini?
Mr. Woods, I want to put her on my list of people to talk to. Can you keep telling me a little bit about the process of how this report came together? It is incredibly robust, and I'm just curious to know what that takes and how that comes together.
Well, it takes a lot of data searching and gathering and then analysis. And, we kind of based the process off of what we have seen done in the past. And that's kind of how we developed the structure. And it also involves a lot of coordination with other departments. So a lot of other departments within the city provided data to us. So a lot of coordination as well.
What does the team look like? Is it just all the planners are?
Well, the long-range planning team is really the primary team that worked on this. We had also a significant amount of help from our GIS team. And then usually there would be like a team member from each department that provided us data that we worked with to either confirm our findings, ask for additional context, and things like that.
It's a lot of information. I like Dr. Schaefer. I glanced through it, and read a good portion of it. But I think there's just a lot of takeaways from it, and I do agree with Bob. There's some surprises. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. White?
Well, let me just echo what my colleagues have said. This is so impressive. As a member of council, we get a lot of paper. This is going on the top of my stack. This is an incredible reference point. When I was looking at it, and you mentioned in your presentation that College Station has a strong tourism, I'm looking, what caught my attention and what I was kind of looking for a little clarification. It's on 210, page 210, but we have available 1,568,770 rooms, hotel rooms, and we've sold 82, which is, or 827,000, which is a percent of about 52%. I guess my question is I'm very interested. We've created a tourism committee. What defines a strong tourism for College Station as you defined? I mean, it's over 50% of our hotels being occupied. Is that a strong? You mentioned in here that we have some attractions. You know, of course, the George Bush Library is a main attraction. Of course, A&M. Of course, Santa's Wonderland.
37.
Page 37, sorry.
37.
You know, I'm just curious, and I don't need a response. I'm just curious because we are talking tourism, and that's a big issue here. I really kind of gravitated to the tourism part simply because, you know, your hotel occupancy tax went up, and that's super exciting. We just want to make sure we can continue to see that growth in there. So no need. I just want to kind of point that out. Thank you so much.
Just maybe I can comment on it a little bit. Michael Ostrowski, Chief Development Officer. So there's a few things that we look at from a tourism perspective, especially as it relates to hotels. One is the occupancy rate. We got about 58%, I think it was, or mid-50s. Continuing to see that increase is beneficial over the years, but also as a hotel revenue and seeing the average daily rate increase as well. So, you know, not only does occupancy increase, but the rates in which hotels can charge increases, which then leads to a higher hotel tax that you will see each year.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. White, now you've had time to think.
It's me, Mr. Wright.
Right, Mr. Wright.
I just kidding with you.
I said right. You just misunderstood me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair. Hey, it's late. I'm old. No, thank you very much for putting together this report. It's fantastic. I don't really have anything to add. I would like to applaud the council so far to the self-restraint we've showed not to take these numbers and start arguing policy over them. I guess we're going to say that for a different night because it's not terribly appropriate, but boy, we have done a good job. But yeah, this is fascinating. I think it's a good foundation. I am 100% ready to accept it and say, yeah, let's move on to those next steps. Comprehensive plan is the backbone to which we do everything, and these are this is, I don't know, the nervous system. I don't know how you want to describe it, but it is very important to get to that final step. So I'm excited to start working our way towards that update again.
Can we get a bound copy of this?
There are some corrections. You can provide us a bound copy, I assume?
Yes, we can.
Mr. Armstrong? Yeah. I've got a couple of corrections I said earlier. I'm not going to bother you with them here. They're in the text of this thing. Certainly, they're unexplained issues. As with all factual documents, we learn a lot. Lots of interesting things that different people have brought out that catch their attention. Certainly, I want to keep a copy of this myself because I'll be making reference to this when I update anybody that asks me about the City College Station. So thank you very much. Is there any objection from the council to considering this acceptable make a motion?
Mayor, I make a motion we accept the report.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schaefer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously with Mr. Armstrong's approval. I will share this with Ms. Wade, and can you wait till after the meeting? I'll just give it to you.
Yes.
And I'll show you where the
Yes.
comments are. Thank you.
And if I could, I also just wanted to give a shout out to PubCom for helping us put together the report and doing such an amazing job on the graphic design and putting up with us as we were trying to get it ready. So thank you.
Thank you to all of you that are involved, the entire staff, I think, that's back there has been playing one role or another in this. And of course, the comprehensive plan update is not done yet, so this is just the base for all of that. Next item on the agenda, and don't let me forget that I failed at the beginning to consider absence requests, but we'll come back to that. Item 8.4, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding single-family architectural standards. Mr. Armstrong.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Anthony Armstrong, Director of Planning and Development Services. I only need 3 minutes. You can put the timer back on. Single-family architectural standards. This was an item that was requested by the council as a future agenda item. It's a pretty short topic as far as kind of what we can do, but I'll go over kind of high level and y'all can have a discussion about it and discuss. But I want to go through what requirements we have currently. So right now we have the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance. This doesn't talk about the actual makeup of the look of a single-family home. There are components in it that relate to commercial, so we do have the non-residential architectural standards, as it would imply, it's non-residential. In essence, it relates to architectural features that we can require within certain developments. Outside of that, the UDO, as far as single family, it really just talks about the lot. So we're talking a lot about the lot. We're talking a lot about the how do you lay out the land? What does it look like from a bird's eye view down? Its requirements, setbacks, impervious cover, parking, as was mentioned earlier, those kind of things. We then also have what applies from a code requirement is the International Residential Code. So this is the building codes. However, those are primarily really just about the construction standard of a home. It's the bones, right? Going back to the anatomy references. It's the bones of the construction of the home. The only minor thing that might relate to material or how something looks aesthetically is on the outside. Obviously, you can't go out there and put up a material that surrounds your home that's drywall. That doesn't meet weathering requirements. It doesn't meet resistance to weather types of requirements that have to be used as a material. But as far as, if you wanted sheet metal, plywood, you name it, there's a number of things you could do on the outside, and we actually can't regulate that. And I'll go over that more in a second. The biggest one that we don't regulate as a city but applies to single-family homes in some areas is HOAs. HOAs are kind of that backbone to, a lot of HOAs have architectural committees that might require certain approval or permits in order to get your new construction home or an addendum or a facade change or whatever done to your house. That's usually where you see those types of requirements in a neighborhood today, not from the city standpoint. As far as what we could do, again, it's a pretty short list. Actually, back in 2019, there was a bill that was passed that, in essence, we cannot regulate building materials as a city entirely. So that applies to commercial. We used to have stone requirements, transparency requirements, window requirements. All that's gone. We can't regulate those building materials as of 2019. In essence, the way it's written, you can't adopt something that is more restrictive than the international codes when it comes to buildings, which the international codes kind of give a layout of different types of materials that can be used. It's more about meeting a imperial metric. You meet a certain number, you pass a certain test. If your material does that, you can use it, is more or less how that system works. So not a whole lot we can do from a material standpoint. Architecturally speaking, that's materials. There's materials in architecture. In that same bill passage, there's a little bit of language that potentially talks about if an area is designated as a historic area. So a good example would be Northgate and Wolf Pin Creek are actually design districts, and designated design districts are architectural districts. Cultural districts is the language that we currently have in the city. They do have requirements that actually do regulate building material and architectural requirements. And those are the only two places in the city where we actually can regulate building materials, is Wolf Pin Creek and Northgate. But again, that's only done for non-residential development. The other thing that's within the statute of what we currently do not do is you could regulate the size of a structure. Again, that doesn't really get you into the architectural feature necessarily or the material or what it looks like. But you could, for instance, say, I only want to allow 1,500 square foot homes in this area. You could make a bulk size related restriction related to that if that was the desire. But that would really be it. But again, pretty quick from my side, that's all I've got. Happy to answer any questions. I think, again, I'm not, this was a council requested item as far as what are different things that you could look to do. I think it was spawned on after a couple of structures were put up recently kind of around this area that might not be the prettiest to look at. But again, happy to answer any questions and talk through the process stuff that we have.
I was going to jump in and slightly reword what he said at the end there, but this was the previous council who requested this. There were some single-family structures, I think it was like 3 or 4 of them built in the south side area. They had obviously a different look than maybe some folks had some concerns about. So council brought up basically like, what can we do as a city? And so I think we answered it in short, which is not much, but this is the presentation coming back to just kind of explain and for the good of the community to understand what our role is basically and what we can do, which is very little. Same thing, we can't tell people what color to paint a house. That's another question I've been asked since.
Okay. Who brought this item forward? Ms. McElhaney, did you request this?
It was a prior council.
Yeah, it was
Councilwoman Hartville.
I think it was
Harville and
Oh, it was from
think-
the last council. Okay.
like last council.
Okay.
It was Councilwoman
Oh, okay,
Hartville.
I'll start with Mr. Wright this time. Any
no.
comments on this?
No, very informative, and I guess dispels the long-held myth that we make Whataburger paint a maroon stripe.
That is a myth.
It's a myth.
It was never even in the code, actually.
That's amazing that myths happen. No, I have nothing. Thank you for this informational.
David, any comments?
Great presentation, no comment.
Ms. McElhaney, any comments?
This is kind of like house building 101. You know, like the things that you guys look at are, like you said, they're site related typically, making sure that you're not infringing too close to your neighbor. I don't know why all of those are in place, but as we move forward with Northgate, the results of the small area plan probably will inform some changes to that particular historic, what did you call it,
It's a
Design district?
Northgate is currently a design district. There could be something that comes out of the plan that is more of a historic designation. There are historic designations in Northgate currently. The language behind it could be beefed up potentially. That's part of the plan.
No, I completely agree with you. And the HOA is really the backbone of where you're able to inflict or impose architectural standards, spoken from someone who is in that industry. But anyway, very clear.
Mr. Yancey?
Thank you, Mayor Nichols. This was brought forward by Councilwoman Harville, as I recall. I seconded her on it relative to safety, fire suppression on 3-story ag shacks. I have since gotten my answer on fire safety, and I appreciate the presentation and have no further comment.
Thank you. Mr. Schaefer?
So, Anthony, thanks. Do we do anything to control the layout related to Ag Shack in an area that's not shared housing? I thought we were looking at plans and ways to try to avoid improper structures being.
Correct, yeah, and that would be, I guess, this item was specific more to the architectural feature.
Right,
We do
sorry.
certainly more related to the home, but yeah, we do have with the shared housing designation, there's certain criteria in there that the administrator looks at to make that determination if it is or is not deemed as shared housing as a use with the permitting stage. And there are criteria that, yeah, we're looking at the inside of the structure, how it's laid out, certain pieces of that to make the determination so that we can differentiate between the two.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I kind of understood that. Thanks.
And that was put in place in '22. It's pretty recent.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no comments. If nobody else does, thank you very much for your presentation.
I got one more for you.
I know you do. I've got to introduce it, 8.5. This is an item, we have 5 workshop items tonight, but short regular agenda. So, item 5, presentation, discussion, possible action regarding an update on the gas outages at Southgate Village Apartments. Again, Mr. Armstrong.
Good evening, Mayor Council. Again, this item was a future agenda item requested to kind of go over what happened around the Southgate Village, that gas outage with Atmos, some different things that potentially could be done from the city side, and kind of how did they get there, how did we get to this process, and what did that look like? And so we're going to start and kind of give a timeline of the kind of the city's involvement, if you will, in the events that happened last fall. So kind of how it came to us originally and got through the process. So the first thing I do want to differentiate between is that apartment complex was in the midst of doing remodels, so they were actively working on making some changes to different plumbing components, different water heaters, lines, electrical work. They were doing various remodel work within the units. So that actually started in July as far as with the city. So they permitted 11 of the buildings out there. There's a little over 20. 11 of those buildings they pulled remodel permits on. And then they got permits issued in July. By the time they were doing demo work, it's probably around September. We don't do an inspection. Yes?
No, during that time, that was a demo when they did shut water off to specific apartments.
Correct, yes.
During the time they were doing the remodel in particular apartments, correct?
Correct,
So that
yeah.
was one of the indicators that somehow or another there was a fault there, but it really was just a part of the construction process.
Right, so the apartment complex got their contractor, they started going to work on these little remodel permits. Demo work probably started around September. We don't have a inspection as part of the demo work, we just permit that, and then we're looking at the new build. Once you tear it down, we just make sure it's gone. Our first inspection was in October, so that's when we did the first inspection on site as a city. And they kept going through the work. But again, yeah, as the mayor mentioned, as part of the remodel permit, they had to shut off water to do the remodel work. And so in and out of that, and in certain systems, the boilers were set up a certain way that might have affected multiple units and homes. But in order to do their work, they obviously had to shut down the water. Remodel work, if any of you are familiar, is incredibly difficult, especially in multifamily complexes, because you've got people actively living in there, and you've still got to do the work to make the changes. And we'll kind of go over that here on the next slide on why what seems like a really easy thing to fix can turn into a really, really big headache very quickly, especially when we're talking about these older complexes. So again, this work started around October time when we started doing inspections on the remodel work. Right before we left for Thanksgiving break, I was actually up at the front. We got a phone call from the plumbers, basically at the time inquiring about how do they go about permitting gas improvements. At the time, we actually didn't know that the lines were broken. They just were asking us, hey, how do we go about this process to apply for these permits? And then obviously we had things, so that was on a Wednesday. We had Thanksgiving break immediately after that, so staff was out. Over the weekend and then into Monday, we learned about the issue about the gas lines essentially being turned off by Atmos because there was large leaks throughout the complex. In essence, the way the complex is set up, there's one master meter into the complex, which is very normal for any sort of multifamily complex. It's one meter, it's one bill, it's easy. Water is done that way as well in a lot of cases, in older complexes for sure. Even in modern day complexes, every high-rise, for instance, has one meter. It's a massive meter, but they have one meter that services that entire high-rise. That is not uncommon. When we came back in on Monday, there were 21 gas repair permits that were applied for the different lines and buildings that were received that day and issued the same day. We also went out and had inspections performed that same day, so we performed 18 inspections, and then we essentially, with the scale of the issue, we dedicated an inspector to make sure every day they were going by there and checking in on the project and checking in with the contractors to be a part of that process. The next day, after some past inspections, they were able to restore gas, so they were able to turn the gas back on and get hot water restored because obviously the boilers had gone down due to the gas being out. After this period is when they ended up noticing there were still additional leaks, and some additional leaks got detected. Because it's the way that we pressure up a system, I'll go over that in a second, but the way that we pressure up a system to test the fix, a lot of times it can lead potentially to a leak if the pipe is old or brittle, and the material of the pipe in this case played a very major role in that as well. But Atmos has started working, I think, with the complex. They were shutting off the gas during the day. You obviously don't want gas actively leaking around people. during the day, and so they were shutting it off during the day to try to make fixes, turning it back on at night so that they could still have access to potential hot water. At the same time, the city engaged with the community. We reached out to them. We offered shower services at the adjacent Lincoln Center, and there were multiple community partners actually came together as well to help them out. I think we also offered Lincoln Center as a potential warming station if they needed that as well. I think on the showers, only 2 people took us up on that offer, and I think maybe handful of people ended up going to the Lincoln Center. December 5th, again, when pressuring at the system, they noticed that some additional gas leaks had occurred, so they applied for an additional gas permit for the yard line, so that's the line in between the building and the meter. It's called a yard line, basically that run. That's what started breaking when they started doing the pressure testing, and so they applied for additional permit to repair that. Again, we kept inspecting pretty much daily, had an inspector going by there. Fast forward about a week, 16 of those 21 buildings had been put back online. They were basically more or less good to go. 2 half buildings, I call it, the way that it was set up. You think of it like a fourplex, again, a multifamily structure, fourplex, 6, 8 units. About half the building was turned back online with where the particular valve was located, and the other half was still in the process of getting fixed. And then there were 2 buildings remaining that needed some level of fixing to be completely back online. We then, shortly after that, staff was on break, and actually the day after Christmas, we had an inspector go out there to go perform the last inspection. He went out there a couple of times during that period of time to perform inspections and be there on call for the plumbers. So again, that's the timeline of the permitting, kind of the city's involvement from a permits process, and then I'm going to go over the kind of code here. So again, the pressure test is really what led to the ongoing part of this issue. Is when you put in the new pipe, the new material, a lot of what you are required to put in now is what we call thick wall poly tubing, in essence some level of a plastic pipe. What was out there was kind of this older metal pipe, and essentially over the last several decades it got erosion, corrosion, there was multiple holes. It also has a lot of joints. So a big plus in modern pipe is that it's a flex tubing, if you will. You can run it almost anywhere very quickly. This previous metal pipe had a lot of joints to make any sort of turns. If you ask the water department, anytime there's a joint, there's a potential for a leak. And that's always, we try to minimize those in our system as much as possible. And certainly with the modern codes, that is taken care of as well. And so during the testing process, where you can shut off gas at the house, and you can shut it off at the meter, and that's normal across even today's codes. So when you put in something even new today, you have your meter, that's one point of shut off. You then have each individual home or each individual unit has a shut off. That line in between is more than likely what might need to get worked on. That can be isolated, as we call it. There usually is not a shut off within that. And so again, with the pressuring up of the pipe to make sure that it passed the different tests, it ended up just essentially making more and more holes within the pipe as they started fixing things just with the age of the pipe and the material. And eventually they had to kind of start playing whack-a-mole, if you will, and get to figuring out what was going on. But the plumbers were diligent with that. We made sure we had inspectors there to make sure that everything was going over well. Again, as far as what we can do, I think a lot of this question was future-proofing this kind of issue. Again, the piping material change is probably the biggest difference. If there's a thick wall poly tubing that fails in my lifetime, that would be kind of wild. It's a very robust type of material now that they have to use. So the lifetime of those is significantly longer. Again, we're talking about these older complexes that use a different material, 40, 50, 60 years old. We potentially could see this in the future. Ultimately, the maintenance of those pipes is all private infrastructure. It's up to those property owners to make sure they're doing their due diligence and checking on their systems regularly, that they're in stable condition. But that's kind of all I got. But I'm sure there's questions, so I'm happy to answer questions. But that's kind of that's the timeline of how we got involved, and again, how they got to that point, I think is the best that we can, the city side of that.
Ms. McElhaney.
Anthony, I don't know that we have ever taken pressure off of a gas line and not had a leak when we repressurized and went for a test. So to my mind, this is something that should not have been a shock, even though it's a very big pain. Is there a procedure that could have been followed, or a way that we could have anticipated, or the contractor or we could have anticipated this and handled it better from the outset so that this, like you said, the whack-a-mole doesn't happen? If the trunk had been replaced as part of the initial plan, I'm not sure what we can do, but this is
Yeah, that's
kind of predictable.
It's a difficult question. As far as what we could do potentially, yeah, you could make amendments to the building code that says if you make any repair to a pipe, you have to replace the whole pipe. That would be very extreme of a change, but would address the issue. And so we do.
For the record, that was not what I was
I can't imagine that was your suggestion. But that would be something that would probably be the only thing in my mind that would be the easiest solution. In essence, obviously you're playing a game is not the right word, but you're trying to figure out how much do I need to repair to fix the issue, but not totally rip up everything in the process and exponentially increase the cost and time of the repair. And so you're trying to balance those two pieces of the equation. I mean, yeah, and in these particular cases where the pipe is so old and it is of a rough material, you really would need to replace the entire thing. And again, we're typically looking to work with the property owners, because at the end of the day, it's also they're trying to spend their time and money to make this happen, and ultimately the code just says it needs to work, it needs to function, and that's what we're looking for at the end of the day.
Just the third piece of that needs to be in that equation is the number of people impacted by it, because like you said, there's how many units was it?
Yeah, in this case, it shut off 21.
And they each had four or eight?
Yeah, they range anywhere from, I think, 6 to upwards of 12 units.
It's just a big
Right.
lift, so.
Other question, Mr. Yancey?
Anthony, great presentation. It sounds to me like we provisioned full-time, dozens of, we did a ton of same-day inspections here, right, or within 24 hours?
Mm-hmm.
And occupied reno, anybody in real estate knows that it's a nightmare to begin with. I'm kind of with my esteemed colleague McElhaney here relative to, is there lessons learned or any after action if something like this ever happens again? It sounds like we did pretty much everything in our power and over the holidays. Is that a fair assessment?
That would be my assessment, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for and then real quick, the polytubing, is that PEX?
It can be, yeah.
So you can use PEX for gas?
I think only in terms of the structure, not in the yard line.
Okay.
That has to be a thick wall.
Thank you, great presentation. Very, very unfortunate situation. It sounds like it was a terrible confluence of events that put these folks out. And if there's any lessons to be learned or anything more than we could do going forward than we did in the past, if we could look at that, that'd be great, but it kind of sounds like we did. Thank you, Mayor Nichols.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yeah, so thanks, Anthony. It does, I agree with Bob, it does sort of sound like a perfect storm in terms of the way things happened with the domino effect and the weather that happened at certain times and the holidays and everything else. But I also think, like I think I heard Melissa saying, is that and Bob, that there might be some way to anticipate this. So I know new tubing, I don't know when that happened, I'm no expert, but new tubing came along at some point. So some buildings a certain age have new tubing, presumably, right? And some buildings a certain age have the old tubing, like the Southgate Apartments had. So there might be some kind of contingency plan or some kind of something in place that says when, and this was also privately done, I get that. I think the city kind of took it on the chin for something that was happening on private property. But they were trying to do the right thing, as I understand it. They were trying to come in, they were trying to make the apartments better, make upgrades, et cetera. Good for them. So if that's going to happen, it seems like there could be some anticipation of this as at least a possibility, and not that it can always be controlled, but that there is something that even if the residents knew ahead of time, hey, this is about to happen, you're in an apartment of this age, we've had these kind of situations in the past, I don't know, it has to be worded carefully, understood, but a way to let people know that these inconveniences may occur while positive things are being attempted. So Yeah, I just don't know. It was a really a tough thing, as you all know. We heard from a lot of people who some had the correct information, some didn't, but it just seems like particularly in these older apartment complexes, which oftentimes are more affordable, that we ought to do what we can to take care of it as best we can as the city, understanding that it's private property. So I don't know. I think the contingency, some kind of contingency, if these things start to happen, how do we react to it? I think I agree that we reacted to it very well based on what you're telling us. We put people on the ground at a time that was inconvenient, and they were working hard to make things right because I think they probably felt bad about it. But it seems like, and hindsight's always 20/20, right? I mean, but maybe is there anything we could learn from this that would make it a little less likely or a little bit easier for people to accept if things went wrong in the future? I don't know. That's kind of a comment. I don't really expect you to have an answer for me, but I hope maybe we can look a little bit more carefully at it to think if there's some way to do that.
Yeah, Mayor, can I address it real quickly? Because I think, one, I would just say, while this was a perfect storm and actually got a lot of attention, things like this happen more frequently than people realize. So I'm going to make a few statements here and hope that anybody listening, here's it from, as the administrator, watching our people do their work. One, I think it's already been said, our folks reacted not only quickly, but went all in on it and at the lowest levels, and then it came up. So, I mean, they're doing it before anybody's telling them to do it. I think we always look at any situation and see, like, what happened and what can we do. This is one of those places that, for me, I always find interesting, is because a lot of what we get is how, from a government perspective, we need to stay out of stuff, and that's a lot of the complaint we get. And then, of course, if something happens, I think there's often an correction that we must have done something wrong. And in this case, even, I think it's been pointed out what the intent of the private party was here, which was good. I would say that in this case, that and Anthony, you can jump in on this too. The biggest single factor outside of all the technical stuff, because although we've talked about this one technical piece, I think you could actually run this scenario 1,000 different ways on different things that could happen versus like saying, oh, we're going to require more shut-off valves or something like that. There's always these other things that can come up. The biggest single factor to me is communication. And we again, from a city standpoint, a lot of times are like, what could you guys do? I would advise anyone out there who is doing work with the city, and in this case, you could go back and look at this. The earlier you communicate with us, we are actually exceptional at helping. I think even exceptional at advising. It is not our role to tell people how to do something other than the regulatory piece, right? We have to be very careful about those pieces. But I know our building and inspection folks and in lots of other areas absolutely have lessons learned and things to share. And even in this process, helped not only going above and beyond from a standpoint of like their time and it being the holidays and how much they put into it, but in helping solve the problem that was really not our problem from just a pure standpoint, but because of who they are and what they do in their life, like helping to fix those things. So if there's one thing, I mean, we can certainly look at it on our side, but I think the thing that was the most challenging here is that it had really already happened before we got a chance to even get in there. And when people come in, I don't care if it's a brand new development, if it's a single house, if it's a pick whatever it is that you're doing, coming into the city and saying, this is what I'm going to do, you're not only going to get like what's the legality, but you're getting the benefit of all of these people's experience to help you figure out some of these problems and to be able to say, it's probably a good idea if you let your folks know, because I know you think it's all going to go perfectly and be done in 2 days, but we can tell you what happens, and here's how we can help you, and here's what we may be able to do. So I would say, again, on our side, trying to get that message out more is probably the biggest thing, but telling people the quicker they come and talk to us, the more we can help them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wright? You have any thoughts, comments?
No, I have nothing to add. Thank you for the report.
Mr. White? I appreciate the update. I endorse with city manager's comments. to me, the thing that you didn't talk about here that isn't your responsibility either, nor the city's, is there was that reaction and response of the nonprofit social service organizations that somehow detected there was some issues there that somehow they could help with. And I do know they did request the city to make available, I think, the showers during off hours in the Lincoln Center, and I think we responded when we could, and I think that was a little bit of the city's ability to respond. Earlier that the parties involved in this engaged the residents and anticipated that there'd be people without hot water for a period of time. How are they going to help them? Well, when those people started calling social services and the social service people started calling us, then it became our problem, or at least as communicated is our problem. And I think there are organizations and entities out there that are prepared to help and set up. I know our Community Services Department has contact with them and coordinates some of that. We don't have a rapid response team for private sector situations like this. I'm not suggesting that we should have, but again, it goes back to that communication point that there are organizations that can help during that interim, and I hope that those folks that were making the decisions in that will recognize in the future that having some alternate sources of hot water. I even heard about cooking outdoors and all of that. I have no idea how that all played out, but I was told that that was certainly part of the issue. I mean, that's something they should have anticipated that people are going to have to do, and they should have arranged to have it made available. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate the update. I guess you got some feedback here, and we appreciate the information that now is available to those that are concerned.